What is up, Dynasty fans? This is Levi, and we are bringing you another episode of Driven Dynasty. Today, we are going to walk through the Dynasty Pulse Check. And so what that is going to include is some ranking comparisons between my personal rankings and the consensus, and some of the reasoning behind why some of the players in my rankings are higher and lower than the consensus. And then we will be going to some must buy and must sell players. After that, we'll look at some blind player comparisons in order to really tease out perception versus production at this point in the season. And then finally, we'll wrap it up with a brief closer look into the Broncos offense and the Broncos as a team as our kind of highlight discussion topic for today. All right, let's get started with the rankings versus consensus. For the consensus, I am using the Flock Expert Average rankings on the Flock site, which are free to access if anyone wants to check out them there. And if you want to check out any of my rankings, they are clearly posted and outlined in the Discord posted in the description if you would like to hop on the Discord and have access to those rankings. And those rankings are updated in real time by myself every week. So first off, we have Devon Achane, who I have as my 18th overall dynasty asset versus 27 in the consensus rank. And so what we have in Devon Achane is a 24-year-old running back who is RB3 on the season at 21 plus points per game. And he is doing all of that in one of the worst offensive situations in the NFL. And so what we are seeing from him right now, I feel like is closer to his floor than his ceiling. A healthy Devon Achane is hyper fantasy productive, and we've seen that even starting in his rookie season in 2023, when the offense was firing on all cylinders, and he was hyper efficient and scoring a ton of fantasy points on limited touches. Well, now he has the workload, and he's handling it well so far this season. But what we don't have is the efficiency. Next up, we have Christian McCaffrey. And I have him at 42nd overall compared to the Flock Expert Average at 59th. And so my big take on Christian McCaffrey is that if you put his production right next to the name Saquon Barkley, then Saquon would be ranked like 35, 36, 37 in Dynasty right now. And so why is, right now Saquon ranked 8 spots ahead of McCaffrey in the expert consensus rankings? Like, they're the same age, and McCaffrey is the one who is being highly productive over Saquon right now. So really, why is Saquon being valued over him? And why is McCaffrey being discounted so much? And again, I think that ranking is a little bit fake. I don't think that reflects the market, because if you have Saquon on a dynasty team and you are trying to send him for Christian McCaffrey, that is 100% not getting done. And so I think that's is a little bit of an outdated ranking in the dynasty consensus there. So third up, we have Chris Olave. I have him at 47th overall compared to 55th in the expert average. And really, my question is, what is the difference between Olave and Garrett Wilson? Because both are 25 years old, very talented wide receivers who are being held back by their quarterback situations. And both of them are producing about the same amount when they're healthy. On the Flock consensus average, Wilson is ranked 27 spots higher than Chris Olave. Like, I don't get it. What's the disconnect? I would rather have Garrett Wilson in Dynasty, sure, but 27 spot difference, they should at least be in a similar tier, as opposed to Wilson kind of being elevated into that elite tier as opposed to Olave being relegated to more of like the wide receiver twos of the world tier. Olave has just as much upside, production upside, value upside as Garrett Wilson, but that is not currently being reflected in their dynasty rankings. Next up, we have Javonte Williams. And so I have him at 59th overall versus the consensus at 71st. Javonte Williams, 25 years old, and is the, RB9 in points per game at this point in the season. And really, the thing that's dragging down Javonte's value is that there's just total uncertainty about his future. But again, there's risk in a lot of players in that range. There's risk with Travion Hendrickson, right? There's risk with Cam Scatterbo coming off of the injury. So I really think that he should be in the range of upside guys who have a lot of questions at the running back position. And, if Javonte gets re-signed with Dallas, then I don't see any reason why he couldn't move up to the tier of like Kyren Williams, Josh Jacobs. Because if he's going to be as productive as those players for the next 2 to 3 years, or I guess this season and then maybe like 2 years after that, then why would he not deserve to be up in that more secure upper echelon? So I think that there's a value upside with Javonte. There's risk here, but at this price, this is the kind of risk that I want to accept because the upside is there, and I think that he really will have a decent value floor, at least in the off season. Next up is going to be Isaiah Pacheco, and I have him 31 spots ahead of the expert consensus at 119th versus 150th. And so for Pacheco, his snap share, red zone work, and routes run were all increasing as the season was progressing. And there were some content creators, took notice of it. Pacheco was a buy in some areas, but then he immediately went down with another injury. And so, unfortunately, I feel like that kind of stopped that progression. And I just want to acknowledge that happened. And although he did get re-injured, if you are somebody who needs a running back down the stretch in the playoffs and things like that, Pacheco could be a great buy. Last up, we have Alec Pierce. I have him as 111th overall versus 138th. And so for Pierce, his yards per route run went up from 1.7 to 2.3 from 2024, so a huge jump. You can really just see the upward trend in his 3-year career so far, and he has drastically improved in the metrics. However, I also, I'm a big fan of Matt Harmon and his work with reception perception, and he has also endorsed that Alec Pierce, just as a route runner, has also really improved and just has looked much better throughout the season. Right now, he is at 11.6 fantasy points per game, and he's doing that with only 1 touchdown on the season. So he is, somebody who got 7 touchdowns in 16 games last season. He's a deep threat. And I think that with how the Colts offense is operating, I think that the upside for him to have significant touchdown regression is definitely there. And even if he doesn't, again, he's scoring 11.6 points per game. That's like low end wide receiver 3 territory. And he's just a solid, like high upside flex wide receiver that you can plug into your lineup. And what really makes me confident in Pierce in terms of dynasty is the Colts trading away Adonai Mitchell to the Jets. And, not that I was ever putting too much stock into Adonai Mitchell. It seems like Pierce is their guy, their X receiver for the future, as well as this season. And it just gives me that little bit of extra confidence that not only do the numbers and, the reception perception see his improvement and his growth as a player, I think the Colts as an organization see it, recognize it as well. Okay, so next up we have my rankings that are my players that are below the expert average rankings. And so first up we have Justin Jefferson. I have him at 17th overall versus 10th overall. And really what this is I just had to move him down into that second tier of dynasty wide receivers with guys like Drake London and Rashee Rice. And just, logically, I couldn't keep him in that number one tier of dynasty wide receivers when he is being outproduced by a significant margin by players who are also younger than him, who are in that second tier. When we're looking at the rest of this season and next season, I don't really see McCarthy going anywhere or making any huge leaps in his play that would be big enough, to really get Jefferson back up into like 20 plus point per game range. And so while he is still one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and he is still a premier dynasty asset, a cornerstone asset, I think that we just have to readjust our expectations for him, because you put him next to someone like Rashee Rice. I mean, who do you think is going to score more points over the next 3 years? And again, these guys are younger than Jefferson. So it's about adjusting expectations given his new situation, his unfortunate situation. Next up, we have Caleb Williams, who I have 32nd overall, and the expert consensus has him at 23rd. For Caleb, his schedule up to this point in the season has been one of the most QB friendly schedules that I have ever seen. So the last 5 games, he had the Commanders, the Saints, the Ravens, the Bengals, and the Giants. And so when you look at that, it's like cash money for quarterbacks. And so while Caleb Williams might be the quarterback 9 in points per game on the season, he's been doing it with one of the best receiving corps in the NFL, with one of the best offensive coordinators in the NFL, and one of the easiest schedules in the NFL. And so in terms of my confidence in him just as a talent, my confidence is much less than really his production shows, because of those factors. And then when we look forward to his schedule that is upcoming, let's see, we have the Vikings, the Eagles, the Packers, the Browns, Packers again, and then the 49ers, which is just a significantly worse schedule for the whole team, but also for the quarterback. And then, his 20.7 points per game on the season really is being propped up by those 2 big games, one against the Dallas Cowboys and one against the Bengals, which we know those 2 teams, again, it's cash money, right? Like it's fantasy gold mine from those 2 teams. And it's inflating his production. And if you take out those 2 games, he's like a mid quarterback 2. And again, you can't just take out a player's best games and then project that as who they are. Sure, absolutely. But again, we're looking at this moving forward, and I don't like with the schedule and from what we've seen from him, I find it hard that to believe that he's gonna be more productive than like the quarterback like 18 rest of season. And then just some other points is that while he has legit rushing upside, as this offense has kind of found its legs and has gotten smoothed out, his rushing upside has just been steadily downtrending. And the last thing for Caleb is that the ground game has really improved. And so that's been taking away both yardage and touchdowns from him and from his fantasy production. Next up, we have Garrett Wilson, 36th overall versus 28th. And I can be brief on this one because really it's the Chris Olave argument. Like, I feel like those 2 guys are in very similar situations, similar age, similar production. I think Wilson has more upside, but I just think that those 2 guys need to be closer together in rankings. I have them in the same tier now, Wilson at the top of the tier, Olave at the bottom of it. And really, I don't want to be paying that much for a guy who has such limited value upside, because next year he's going to be 26. And then even if he gets a good rookie quarterback who pans out, rookie quarterbacks usually we've seen some rookie quarterbacks really sling it, but usually rookies they take some time to ease in. And so even if he's good down the stretch next year, it just takes time, and the more time we have to wait for this to pay off, Wilson is just getting older and older, and his value upside is shrinking and shrinking. And I just don't, at that price especially, I don't really want to be holding a player that I can't be confident in starting and I know is likely to decrease in value as well. And so again, I like Wilson. I think he's a great player. I think that there is upside, there is production upside, but we have to balance that like production upside with the value. And then I guess I can be brief as well on Courtland Sutton and Alvin Kamara, who you can see I have ranked behind consensus. And really, again, I don't want to be holding veterans on my team that aren't being difference-making producers who I know are going to lose value. And these are just two guys who have been underwhelming so far in 2025. And, I have some confidence that both players can maybe do better down the stretch, some hope, I should say, that they can do better. But we haven't really seen it, and they both have a lot of questions in their offenses. And I just, if I can get production at a similar level, at a similar price that is way younger and not going to depreciate in value rapidly, then that's what I want to do. And I just feel like these two are being propped up by kind of that perception that they are significant fantasy point producers, when in actuality they haven't been this season. And so there's two guys that I am much lower on than consensus. Next up, this is going to be my my smash sell of the week. So the smash sell is somebody who, despite, no matter what your team goal is for the season, no matter what your team looks like, the smash sell is going to be a guy that I think that basically every team should be trying to sell. If it's not going to destroy my team from a construction standpoint, then I'm just going to smash the accept button. And so the guy, and we're just going to do one a week for this. So for this week, it's Saquon Barkley. And that's just because, looking at the rankings, he is still just so highly valued in these expert rankings. Again, I do not guarantee that your league markets are going to reflect this and to reflect his price, and that you will be able to move him. But if you can, this is what I recommend. And I know that Barkley is still pretty valued in Dynasty, because I've seen people send like a first and a second or two firsts for him in multiple of my leagues. I've seen these trades where I'm like, wow, I would not be sending that much for Saquon Barkley. And so the reason is that Saquon has only been producing like 16 points per game, and that is just not significant production for that price, for that age of a player. And when you look at the rankings, he is, and so Saquon is ahead of guys like Josh Jacobs, Breece Hall, Christian McCaffrey, back-to-back with Kyren Williams. Like, if you get 1-for-1 for Kyren, you are getting the same, if not better, production from Kyren and a significantly younger player. If you can trade Saquon 1-for-1 for McCaffrey, you are getting the same age of player, the similar risk profile of player, and significantly more production. If you can do him for Josh Jacobs, you're getting, again, similar age, but more production. Breece Hall, much younger, similar production. And so I don't think he belongs in that tier of players. And so I don't think that I think it would be difficult to get that 1-for-1 trade between those guys. I think that would be hard. But if you can get like Javonte Williams plus for Saquon Barkley. Javonte, I talked about him as a buy. But if you can get Javonte plus, right, plus like a second, I think that's just like free value. If you can get Derrick Henry in a more significant plus, you're going to get similar levels of production for this year and probably next year, and you're going to be able to get a significant plus on it. But what I would really want to do is be packaging like Saquon and like a wide receiver 2 type, or Saquon and a first, and go up and get like Jonathan Taylor, go up and get Devon Achane, go up and get Omarion Hampton. Package him up to get one of those really like cornerstone running back pieces who are going to be significantly more productive and are significantly younger and will hopefully be producers for your fantasy team long term. So that is my smash sell Saquon Barkley. If you're a contender, those are some of the moves that I would look to make. If you're a rebuilder and you somehow still have Saquon on your roster, you have a lot more options. You can, cross position, go for a wide receiver. You can look for draft capital. And again, any of these trades where it makes any sort of sense and it's equal value, I'm smash selling Saquon at this price at this point. Next, we will have the smash buy of the week, Omarion Hampton. So here is the case for Omarion Hampton. He is a high upside rookie who we have seen be a talented running back, and he is in one of the best offensive situations that you can project going into 2026. The Chargers are going to be a very productive offense. I think that they are struggling right now due to injuries, specifically to Joe Alt and to Slater on the offensive line, and you can see that in the passing game, you can see that in the running game. But really what I think is going to happen is when Omarion Hampton comes back, if he can be even a little bit productive and just show something, then in the offseason, the Dynasty community is going to talk and talk and talk, and we're going to look at Hampton and this line and the effectiveness of this offense with and without those two key players. And then I think that he is going to be projected as like one of the more productive running backs in the NFL next year, because his offensive situation is going to be phenomenal in 2026. So I could easily see Hampton being like a late first, early second round redraft pick. And again, this is some projecting, right? There's risk in really any player, but there's just very clear upside for him to be very highly valued come the offseason. And so I think that there's a clear value in. He's hurt, so you're getting him at a discount already. And I think that he should be higher ranked than he is currently. And then, if anyone is going to overtake Bijan or Gibbs as like the top one or two running backs in Dynasty, like it's going to be Achane or it's going to be Hampton. Genty's up there as well, but I think there's just way too much that needs to happen for the Raiders offense for Genty to really hit his ceiling. That in 2026, I find it hard to believe that Genty is going to really have that upside of breaking into that very, very top tier of Dynasty running backs. Whereas I think Hampton, his situation and the production that it could bring has that upside. Okay, so next up, we are going to be, let's see. Okay, we're going to be doing the blind player comparison. So we have, first up, two quarterbacks, one age 22 and one age 24. Points per game for player A is 18.5. Points per game for player B is 18.93. The flock rank for player A is 33, and the flock rank for player B is 6. So as we can see, these are two players who have been producing very similarly, and the younger player is actually the player who is ranked lower. So let's I'll give you just 1 second to kind of think about who these players are. And okay. So player A is Jackson Dart and player B is Jaden Daniels. And so when we look at Jaden Daniels, you can say, oh man, like he has had such an unfortunate season with the injuries to his skill players, his own injuries, this and that. Like it's just not a great offensive situation. Some things need to change for him. But like the upside is there. Well, I mean, can not all of those things also be said about Jackson Dart and his situation with the Giants? Like, again, this isn't like an argument to having Jackson Dart over Jaden Daniels. But again, these player comparisons are just to kind of make you scratch your heads, to kind of think about these players, to think about the perception versus like the production, right? And so we're looking at Daniels as like a top 3, 4, 5, 6 dynasty asset because of his rookie year when, his second season comes out and for a multitude of reasons underperforms. And honestly, like this is kind of a similar trajectory to what happened with CJ Stroud. Jaden Daniels was more productive in both seasons than Stroud, but it's a similar situation. Not to say that the two are the same player or anything, but I think that this is a stab at maybe Jackson Dart could even be valued higher than this, and maybe Jaden Daniels for the time being, with everything that's going on with both his injuries and with the team, could maybe stand to slide down rankings just a little bit more. So next up, we're going to have a pair of wide receivers. Player A, age 26, points per game, 14.67. And player B is a 26-year-old wide receiver as well, who is scoring 14.63 points per game. And so almost identical points per game on the scoreline. One of them is ranked 10 on Flock, and one of them is ranked 60 on Flock Fantasy. So I'm sure, based off of the previous segment, that you probably already guessed that player A is Justin Jefferson, and player B is Devontae Smith. And so really, again, this is kind of showing how disappointing Jefferson has been this season. And when you compare him to a guy like Devontae Smith, their stat lines, their age, like it looks identical. And again, not an argument to say that you should take Smith over Jefferson, but I think that this is when you look at this, it solidifies that sentiment that Justin Jefferson maybe needs to slide down rankings a little bit, just as we adjust to the new expectations of the situation, as well as a nod to Devontae Smith really coming on despite the low passing volume and overtaking A.J. Brown in terms of target, production, air yards, the whole shebang. So I was not super high on Devontae Smith earlier in the season. I was not confident that he could produce in that limited passing volume situation alongside A.J. Brown. But if he's just going to overtake A.J. Brown and just be the dominant wide receiver in that offense, then hats off to Devontae Smith, and good for him. Okay, next up, we have a pair of running backs. Running back A is 24. Running back B is 25. Player A has scored 10.6 points per game, and player B has scored 10.13 points per game so far in this season. And they are separated by like almost 70 spots. Nice. In the Flock Fantasy rankings. So, who is player A and who is player B? Player A is Tajay Spears, who I didn't include his first game back from injury where he was technically eligible and saw like 3 touches and like 20% of the snaps. I didn't include that one in the sample size just because he was still coming back from injury and was not ramped up yet. But ever since that second game back from the injury, Tajay has been scoring 10.6 PPR points per game, which is not great, but that's like a solid RB3 kind of score line, and he is a player who has plenty of upside on a week-to-week basis with his receiving work and his big play ability. Kenneth Walker, on the other hand, has been very disappointing, is actually a year older and is scoring less points per game, but he is ranked significantly higher in dynasty rankings. And I get it. Kenneth Walker is far and away like the better real life talent at the running back position. The problem is that he just is not getting those high value touches right now in the current system. He's not getting very much passing work. He's not getting the red zone carries. And so that's what's really lowering his production. And so again, I would much rather have Kenneth Walker over Tajay Spears. But another perception versus production here, because you look at Kenneth Walker, like, oh, if he goes somewhere else and he gets to be the workhorse, he has so much upside. If Charbonnet goes down, he gets to be the workhorse. He has so much upside. Well, the same things can be said for Tajay Spears. There's a reason why I picked these two players to compare, is that Tajay Spears is also a player who could, one injury away from being more of a workhorse. If could, with this offseason, brings changes to his backfield, and then he could be he could benefit from it and get more work. And so again, I think these are two players that could probably stand to be a little bit closer in dynasty rankings moving forward. All right, last up we have a pair of tight ends, both age 24, tight end A 9.44 points per game and tight end B 11.88 points per game. So there is about a 2.5 point difference between these two players. The significant thing here is that there is actually 10 full rounds of dynasty startup ADP between these two players. So give you just 1 second to think about who these two players could be, and here we go. So player A at 193 in the rankings is Theo Johnson, and then player B is Sam Laporta. And so for Laporta, he's that more solid, consistent tight end. He's a guy who is both young and we know he's talented, and that he has a secure place in his offense, and that he will be a producer to some degree. We can have confidence that he will be a producer for years to come. Whereas Theo Johnson, someone that we are much less excited about, someone who we do not know if he is going to be a special NFL talent. And more likely than not, he is not going to be. He's a player who probably for the Giants could be easily replaced at some point in the future, either in the draft or in the trade market. But right now, he is filling in for the injured Malik Neighbors, and to some extent, along with the other pass catchers in that core, and getting more work because of it. And so the question really is, what are the expectations for Theo Johnson moving forward? And is he a player that we can have any confidence in? Or is he somebody that's more of a flash in the pan? And once like Neighbors come back and maybe the Giants add another pass catcher in the offseason, he fades to completely irrelevant a completely irrelevant fantasy tight end. And so those are good questions. But I do think that in terms of raw production, 2.5 points per game is not worth 12 rounds of startup ADP. However, again, like we were saying, Laporta is that player that we can have confidence in for the future as we are playing Dynasty. So this one, again, same age, very interesting. Okay, and then we are going to finish up with the closer look. And we're going to be talking about the Broncos as a team, kind of as an offense. And so I was really just kind of looking at this team and thinking and going, man, their schedule so far has looked pretty darn easy. They started off with the Titans. I guess it would be easier if I talk about the matchups that were actually difficult. So they had the Colts in week 2, the Chargers in week 3. I believe they lost both of those games. And then they had the Philadelphia Eagles in week 5, as you can see. And then other than that, like none of these teams are teams that we are super excited about, to put it nicely. Outside of those 3, these are some of the worst teams in the NFL. And there's a lot of pretty bad defenses on this list. And then I think there's also some good defenses in like Houston, the Jets previously, and Las Vegas. But those teams, while they have good defenses, have mediocre at best offenses, especially at that time. So the Broncos as a whole have just really kind of had an easier schedule. And even the games where they had a harder matchup were going against a better team, there were still teams that you could put points up on, especially fantasy points, in the Colts and in Dallas and with Philadelphia. And so when we look at their schedule moving forward, it makes me very nervous. So we have the Chiefs in week 11, and then Washington 13. Then we have the Raiders, the Packers, the Jaguars, and Kansas City. And so besides the Washington Commanders and the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are like middle of the road matchups, not necessarily like easy, not hard, but like middle of the road in terms of like for the offense. The Chiefs, the Raiders, the Packers, and then the Chiefs again are very hard defensive matchups. And so really when I look at this and I think about this, it makes me nervous for this whole offense and really for all the assets in the offense, because their strength of schedule early in the season was just so good. And then now their strength of schedule is very, very bad, kind of going down the stretch. And again, this is in terms of like the strength of schedule for like the offensive, like fantasy assets in it, not necessarily like the strength of schedule in terms of like real NFL team things. So looking at this, I'm like, I think the Broncos just as an offense at this point in the season are a big fade. If you can get off of guys like Dobbins, Harvey, Bo Nix, Troy Franklin, then I think that is something that is smart. In whether you're playing like regular redraft fantasy football or you're playing Dynasty and you're going for a championship, like I am just very much not confident in these assets being fantasy productive for your teams down the stretch because of this schedule, and because just we've seen the Broncos now play against a tough defense 2 weeks in a row, and the Houston Texans and the Las Vegas Raiders, and it is just much less pretty than when they're playing against the Dallas Cowboys or the Cincinnati Bengals or the Tennessee Titans. And so the actionable information here would be to take a look at the Broncos on your rosters and see if you can, move off of them at a decent value while you still can, if you are trying to win a championship and such. And if you don't have these guys on your rosters, then maybe keep an eye on them down the stretch. In terms of Dynasty League specifically, see if you can maybe buy low on some of these assets after the season who underperformed because of this absolutely brutal schedule. And that brings a close to the Dynasty Pulse Check. I hope that you all enjoyed, and I hope that this will be a running series where you can get some quick and dirty Dynasty content, some thought-provoking things, some actionable information for your Dynasty teams, and just have a good time. If you are interested in liking or subscribing, I would appreciate that. It would support the channel. But another thing you could do that would support the channel would be to join the Discord down in the description. For the next week, we are doing free team reviews and free trade questions down in the Discord. My rankings are also available down there. If you join the Discord, the instructions for everything, again, down in the description. So thanks for listening. I hope to see you next time.